Good afternoon and welcome to Top 3 KPIs to Improve Lift Truck Operator Performance. Today's presentation is sponsored by ID Systems. My name's Tom Andel and I'm Editor-in-Chief of Material Handling and Logistics. Before we begin, let me explain how you can participate in today's presentation. First of all, you'll notice a toolbar at the bottom of your console. These buttons allow you to open and close widgets on your screen. If at any time you experience difficulties with the audio or advancing of the slides, simply press your F5 key to refresh your webinar console. You can download the slides for this webinar by clicking on the folder icon on your screen. You can do this during the webinar. It won't interrupt your presentation. We appreciate your feedback, so please click on the red survey icon and complete the form. Please also be aware that today's session is being recorded and will be available on the Material Handling and Logistics website within the next week, so you'll be notified by email when the archive is available. Let me now introduce today's speakers. Roger Tenney began his career in the material handling industry in 1990 with Ford Motor Company. During his 16-year tenure at Ford, Roger held a series of increasingly responsible management positions in operations and manufacturing, and he led the development and deployment of a variety of technologies, including wireless vehicle management technology, to drive improvements in material handling safety and efficiency. After leaving Ford in 2007, Roger held several positions that focus on using vehicle management systems combined with data from other operational systems to identify and deliver process improvements and operational savings across multiple industries. In his current position as Director of Business Intelligence at ID Systems, he's establishing new methods and measurements to enable enterprise-wide and industry-wide benchmarking in the use of powered industrial vehicles and material handling operations. Roger graduated from Lawrence Technological University with a Bachelor of Science degree in electrical engineering. Our other presenter, Matt Rhodes, is a 20-year veteran of material distribution engineering, focusing on the convergence of human resources and technology, continuous process improvement, and optimized material flow. From 1994 to 2014, he held a series of progressively responsible positions at Walgreens, North America's largest drugstore chain, culminating as Director of Engineering for Walgreens' Supply Chain and Logistics Division. At Walgreens, Matt led the design and development of a variety of turnkey material handling solutions, including new distribution center startups. Matt was an early adopter of wireless asset management technology for powered industrial trucks due to the significant impact these vehicles have on workplace safety and accountability, operational costs, and productivity. Matt joined ID Systems in 2014 as Director of Retail and Distribution Practice. And Matt graduated from the University of Iowa with a Bachelor of Science degree in Industrial Engineering. Now let me turn things over to our presenters. Gentlemen, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Tom, and also I'd like to thank all of you for joining us today and taking time out of your busy schedules to be a part of this seminar, where we hope to be sharing with you what we have found over time to be some of the key performance indicators, or what we will be referring to as KPIs, that can be used to help you achieve significant improvements in how your organization utilizes their material handling assets. In my role as leading the client services organization here at ID Systems, I'm responsible for, amongst other things, the development and management of our business intelligence tool or product that we refer to as ID Systems Analytics. Part of my background for doing this is during my tenure at Ford Motor Company, we were some of the pioneers in the development of tools to integrate data from vehicle management systems or VMS solutions, and combining that with data from operation systems and or other business management tools to create unique ways of looking at improvements in the material handling fleet efficiencies. The ID Systems Analytics tool has grown out of this experience, along with experiences by myself and others within my team at large multinational clients that we have, to create the product with its very unique capabilities within the industries. Before we get started into the overall presentation, though, we would like to be able to take a very quick poll so that we can better tailor the overall presentation to meet your needs and align with your current experiences with VMS solutions. So to achieve this, we'd like each of you to select the appropriate answers to the following question. What vehicle management technologies do you currently use on your lift trucks? We'll give you about 30 seconds to reply to this, and if you have multiple applications that you're using, please select multiple answers. Okay, thank you for doing this. Now let's look at the results of the survey that we just asked you to participate in. And the vast majority of you have warehouse management systems, which is a very interesting element of this overall process, because one of the things that we find is that WMS systems and VMS systems, when combined together, and more specifically in utilizing the KPIs that we'll be talking about, are where you can get at least 1 + 1 = 3, and oftentimes what we find to be 1 + 1 = 4 or 5. That the combined information that results from the combination of the two technologies is much more significant than each of them on their own. There's also a large portion that don't use any of these solutions, and we hope that we can, through the information that we present and share today, give you further interest or further justification for how a vehicle management system may be able to assist you in your overall operational performances. Now that we've gone through this, I'd like to be able to turn the floor over to Matt Rhodes, and he'll provide some of the data and some of the information that has been the foundation of where we have gathered our experience, our depth of customer base that has enabled us to be able to establish the KPIs that we are talking about today. Matt?
Thank you, Roger. Good afternoon, everybody. Just first like to start with a little bit about my current role, as it's relevant to what Roger was saying. I'm focused on the Vehicle Management System Solution, or you may hear us refer to it as VMS throughout this presentation. My particular focus with ID Systems is their business intelligence and analytics tool. To date, vehicle management systems have been used primarily with a site-centric focus aimed at driving value at a plant or DC. Our business intelligence platform is geared at producing a multi-site visibility so that companies can measure and compare multiple locations or their entire enterprise, or even benchmark against their industry. So this tool will give them a much wider view of their operation. ID Systems is a publicly traded company on the NASDAQ, and they've been around for 20 years. ID Systems is the leading provider of wireless industrial vehicle management systems around the world, and they've pioneered many of these wireless solutions and have numerous patents. Headquartered in Woodcliff Lake, New Jersey, we have a global footprint with subsidiaries in Texas, Germany, and the UK. Our solutions are installed on over 1,000 customer sites in 20 different countries and on 6 continents. So as you can see in the next slide here, our customer base includes over 100 of the Fortune 200 companies. Significance of our ID Systems market leadership is that we have the richest database of industrial vehicle activity, reflecting operator behaviors over a huge range of applications across all types of vehicles and in every major industry category, including automotive, consumer packaged goods, retail and retail distribution, aviation, and government. With such a large customer base, we have data coming in every day, contributing to the freshness and accuracy of our database. And our information and analysis is based on over 10 million man-hours of operational data. When people think about an industrial truck fleet, historically they tend to think about the capital dollars needed for the actual truck acquisition, as well as the ongoing truck and maintenance expenses. But that viewpoint does not take into account about 70% of the total cost of fleet ownership. VMS gives you insight into all other aspects of truck ownership. So along with the cost of the truck and the safety aspects, you have administrative costs, you have training costs, damage and lost time costs, but the largest expense is not the truck, but rather the labor. So depending on your shift structure or your operating scheme, you may have 2, 3, or even 4 operator shifts across a work week. Tax loaded with benefits, those costs are significant and far outweigh the cost of the truck itself. So there's tremendous opportunity to optimize and improve productivity there. So when the question comes up to us, why do organizations deploy a VMS solution? Quite often there are different answers. Many companies have traditionally deployed a VMS system from a bottom-up approach that addresses the safety and administrative concerns, as well as the maintenance issues. These needs usually stem from the plant or the DC level and their needs for driving value locally. However, as companies and their management teams become more financially focused on reducing cost and driving value, they realize that the truck fleet is a major cost center to them. But many companies really don't know how to attack those costs. They don't have insight into what's going on in their own operations sometimes. For these companies, the reasons for installing a VMS become top-down solution, so they get a level of accountability on their forklift operations, but along with that accountability, they are looking for data and ultimately insight into their operational performance. In simple terms, the VMS turns your everyday forklift into a data acquisition tool that can be leveraged to drive improvement, and companies want data to drive their decisions. So we're here to the next question for the group here. What are the most important priorities your organization has for managing lift trucks? Please check all that apply. We'll give a few minutes here for everyone to put in their answers. Toggling over to the results, I see that 81% have enforcing lift truck safety policies, including driver training and pre-shift vehicle inspections. That's not surprising, as safety is paramount to most companies and keeping their operators safe, and that's a difficult area to manage. Kind of get everyone on the same page and make sure everyone's aware of all the attributes that a VMS can provide. I'll quickly run through some of the various functionality that a VMS offers a company. So first and foremost, they offer a wireless access control, usually through a swipe of a badge or a fob, so that you can ensure that an authorized driver, and more importantly, a properly trained driver, is operating the truck safely. Training dates and expiration dates can also be managed through the system as well, which dovetails well with the answer to the question that we just saw. Another safety function is automated impact management. If an incident does happen, management is alerted right away, and the system requires a supervisor to intervene, so they can come and assess the event, take appropriate action if needed. Impact sensing creates a culture of accountability, which really helps reduce the phantom damage and the expensive repair out there. In addition, you have a paperless electronic checklist functionality, also tied into the answer to the question we just saw. While being electronic streamlines your process and significantly reduces your clerical and compliance burden, it can also alert maintenance of any issues found on the truck so that they can be addressed and repaired proactively rather than out on the floor reactively when it might inhibit production. Planned maintenance functions can be scheduled automatically and coordinated with your CMMS maintenance system. Without having someone run around and check all the meters on the truck, the schedule can be based on the truck usage and wear rather than simply an hour meter that's counting. Someone might have left a key on, or there might be an activity that's really causing no wear and tear on the truck. We can look at other indicators in terms of motion and other hour meters that with the VMS system that can trigger PM schedules more prudent to the actual use of the vehicle rather than just on a calendar or by an hour meter. While the day-to-day functional benefits of safety and maintenance quickly justify a VMS solution, you get the ability of your forklift to now become a data acquisition tool, as I mentioned before. So in addition to operator access control and impact sensing, there's a wide variety of other sensors and software options you can have. You can track motion, load sensing, which is when a product or a pallet is on board, location tracking, where you are within the facility. It can also give you the ability to dynamically identify and log in and out of various job types within your facility and communicate that back to your host. The collection of all these data points allows companies to come up with comprehensive vehicle and operator metrics, which enable them to then view and address this major cost center and to gain insight into their operational and financial drivers, whether it is right-sizing your fleet or addressing productivity issues. It is around this functionality and productivity metrics that we will focus the remainder of this presentation. So if you look at the data that's available in a VMS system, there's a limitless number of combinations of comparative metrics or KPIs that can be derived from all the data captured. These include cost and performance metrics that give you qualitative means of evaluation and comparison of your operations. We can even integrate other data into our VMS reporting if desired. For instance, if you wanted to add production data from your WMS, I know that was on the first question, so that is a capability. Or maybe from your labor management system, and you want to combine different data points to drive even further value in your vehicle management system reporting metrics. So let's look at some of the information we can track in our VMS. There's a wide variety, but we're going to focus on a specific few core KPIs for today. If you look at the colored stack chart on the right, we can record log-in hours planned or expected for your operation over time. That can be a shift, a day, a month, or any period of time. So that would be the red bar. We can record your operator's actual login hours through access control, which is illustrated by the purple bar. That's the time the operator is actually logged into the vehicle. We can record activity, which is the truck in motion, or is it lifting or doing a function. That is illustrated by the blue bar. And lastly, we can also track activity with product or a load on board with an actual pallet or product being moved. That would be the green bar. So just for an example, let's say we were tracking our performance over an 8-hour shift. Including breaks, let's say you expect 7.5 hours of work time, or 7.5 hours would be your red bar. The vehicle management system shows the operator was logged in for 5 hours of that 7.5 hour shift, which is the purple bar. So comparing and contrasting your purple bar to the red bar would be our first KPI, actual operator login versus planned login time. So we now know that the operator was logged in 5 hours of the shift, but the VMS shows us that the operator was active or in motion 3 out of those 5 hours. This becomes our second KPI, operator activity versus actual login. Drilling even further down, the VMS shows that the operator was traveling with a load 1.5 hours out of 3 hours of motion, which becomes our third KPI. Well, this is just an illustrative example I use. The numbers and relative ratios are not uncommon. The lift truck is designed to move product and traveling with a load, yet that is a small amount of the total time or total planned login time, so it is easy to see where the opportunities are with a forklift fleet. We have worked with hundreds of customers and thousands of sites, and in our experience we found that the lift truck operator performance and material handling productivity at its highest level can be summarized by these 3 key metrics that we outlined, and they can become the analysis starting point for improving your operational performance. I'd like to turn it over to Roger now, and he will walk us through some steps on how we can start to analyze the data and draw actionable conclusions. Roger?
Matt, thank you. And just to help visualize some of the things that can be done with the data richness of a VMS-based business analytics or business intelligence tool, we're going to look into the first KPI just as an example that Matt showed, and this is the actual versus planned login time. What you see on the screen in front of you on the right-hand side are some ways of doing some quick analysis to determine where you are at, where you could be, and what the financial benefits of that transition might look like. And this will allow you as an individual location, a division, or a group within a company or an entire enterprise to quantify the benefits that can be realized, or, depending upon your position, the cost of underperformance that you're incurring relative to your competitors. Starting at the top, the baseline score is a score that represents the performance of the location when they first implemented the VMI-based KPI methodology. In this case, the vehicles, when they first started, were being logged in 54% of the time that was planned for their time. The status as of today, the second item, is at 74%, or a 20 percentage point improvement in the overall performance from the time that the system was deployed until the time when this data was recorded. This represents, if you look on the lower right-hand side, an improvement of $5,000 in overall productivity improvements in throughput for that operation for each calendar year for each vehicle. If the next slide down, the enterprise 85th percentile, this represents what the top 15% of vehicles and or operators within the corporation for this particular site is performing at. If this particular location actually is running or operating at 74%, which is the same level as the 85th percentile, so they've been able to, over the period of time, go from lagging significantly behind their peers to performing at the highest level of their peer group. However, if you look at the very bottom piece, the industry 85th percentile, and this is data that is enriched by the depth and breadth of the ID Systems Analytics product platform, you see that we're still running about 9 percentage points short of what would be considered best in class across the entire industry that we compete within. That gap between our current performance of 74% and 83% is a cost penalty of over $2,000 per year per vehicle within our operation. And so that is the competitive advantage that our competitor has over us that we can utilize the KPI methodologies to close. Another way to look at the individual site performance of each KPI is to look at what the performance has been over time. The particular example that we're showing you now is actually an example of what a typical location would experience not utilizing any form of KPI or VMS solution. You notice that the metric over time, although there are periods where from day to day you go up and down, the performance over the entire period of time is relatively flat. Now we're going to utilize this particular chart to define some points or some data elements that are part of each of the KPIs. The first is the daily score. This is represented by the square blue box that is shown within this chart. The daily score is the absolute value that is calculated based upon the particular KPI that we're measuring. So in this case, the actual versus planned login time. The blue box, the blue square that the daily score arrow is pointing to, is at 0.70 or 70%. So this is saying that for every 10 hours of vehicle activity or planned vehicle activity, I'm actually only getting 7 hours of vehicle login time. And this is what we would be calling our KPI number 1. Moving to the next element, we have the baseline score. This is established at the launch of the KPI metrics utilizing the VMS system, and establishes this is where each individual site or the enterprise as a whole started within their journey down their process improvement. This is represented by the cyan line in this chart, and it is a metric to establish over time and it allows you to quantify over time what the operational and financial benefits that you've realized by leveraging and utilizing and implementing the intelligence and information provided by the VMS KPIs. Additionally, it is important to be able to, and it's possible to be able to, over time, update the baseline. So, as an example, 12 months in after you've deployed a solution, you may go through a process change within your operation. You may go through a retooling effort if you're in the manufacturing or some type of operational change within your system. You will be able to reset that baseline to understand what impact from that point in time that data marker, that time frame, and measure the incremental benefits that those actions have from that point in time of implementation. The next element that we have is the enterprise 85th percentile. And this is represented by the orange line shown in the graph above. And this is a statistical measurement that helps to identify the level of performance for the top 15% of the vehicles and or operators across your entire enterprise. If there's only one location that has a VMS tools deployed, this is the top 15% within that particular location. If there are 10 locations that within the company as a whole that have the VMS system deployed, this is the top 15% across all locations within that company footprint. The next element that we have is the industry 85th percentile. This is represented by the thick magenta line on this chart, and is the same statistical analysis that was done for the enterprise. The only caveat is this now represents the top 15% of all vehicles or all operators across your entire industry peer group, not just within your own enterprise or within your own location. So it allows you to understand what truly is the best of the best within your industry and the gap that you have between them, yourself, and them, and be able to quantify the financial penalty or advantage that you have over your competition. An example of industry groups that we represent within we have available to represent within this metric are retail distribution, consumer packaged goods, manufacturing, both heavy manufacturing, automotive, and light manufacturing, and third-party logistics providers at 3PLs. Up until now, all of the metrics have referenced the next chart element is our 3-day average score. This is shown by the thin magenta line that's hidden very, very mysteriously behind all the blue square boxes. This is intended to be a rolling 7-day average of each of those individual daily scores that are shown by the blue squares. This particular metric, the value of this is key to understanding what your true trending is. Day-to-day scores typically are too volatile to be able to make conclusions or to draw significant intelligence as to what actions to take. Using the 7-day moving average, you can understand what's truly happening within your operation, and leveling out for variances between operational differences that are day-to-day or different days of the week, such as weekdays versus weekends. Up until this point, all of the metrics that we have reference the left-hand side axes, which are used to define the actual value of the KPI. The next element of this metric that we do references the right, which does a financial quantification of that process. This final element, the daily benefit, in its simplest terms, is the monetary difference in the performance of each day relative to the baseline level. In other words, if I take any given day and have what my actual login hours were, and subtract from that what my hours would have been if I were performing at the baseline, and multiply that by my hourly rate, I get the value for that particular green bar. In this particular example, because the performance has been flat over the entire period, if you sum all the pluses and minuses of those green bars, you come at or near a zero benefit, because in essence, there's been no performance change over this period of time. On the next example that we have is for a site that's actually utilized VMS-based KPIs to improve their operation. In this example, the client monitored their performance for the first 2 months after deployment of the VMS KPIs. Using the information intelligence that they gathered and identifying the underlying factors that were constraining their current level of performance, they identified training and process changes that they could implement to improve their overall operational efficiency. You can see that after that 2-month period of time, over a period of about 2 weeks, there was a dramatic improvement within the performance of the overall site. Looking at the 7-day average score line, the thin magenta line, you'll see a dramatic shift from hovering around the baseline score to now being consistently above the industry 85th percentile. The shift in the daily benefit bars oscillating during the first 2 months back and forth between a positive and negative range to now being completely positive represents the total financial benefit of the process and training changes that they made after that first 2 months, and using the data that was gleaned from the VMS KPIs. The key to determining the actions to take or the process to make these changes try to understand the root causes that are influencing the performance of each of the top three KPIs that we're talking about. Most organizations utilize a single score to compare the performance across their operations. This score most often is equivalent of the average within each of the sites. Although this is a valid way to compare sites, it really does little to help guide the individual location as to what underlying actions they need to address, behaviors or process changes they should be able to utilize to improve their operation as a whole. Adding the 85th percentile element to this slide provides some visibility into the variance that occurs within each site. However, and it gives you the optimal target that the sites should reach for both the individual location and the enterprise. However, the mere fact that there is this magnitude of difference between the average and the 85th percentile indicates that there is a wide variability within the individual performance at each vehicle or operator level. This variance we can begin to understand by looking at the yellow bar that we've added to the chart that shows the percentage of the operators that are operating within the tolerance range of the average performance for that individual group or facility. Note the difference in this percentage of performance between Dallas and Philadelphia, the sites on the right-hand side of the chart. This is telling us that there is much more variability in actual login hours at Philadelphia versus Dallas. By adding the next bar, the bar that we commonly refer to as a leaders bar, you can see that there's a certain percentage of vehicle operators that are performing well above the average of the organizations as a whole. Adding the red bar, or what we would refer to as a laggards bar, you see that there are a significant percentage are falling short of the average. Most significantly, a subgroup of operators within the Philadelphia operation are significantly below the overall average of the Philadelphia team. The causal factors that are driving this highest percentage of resources that are underperforming can be training, process-related, facility-driven, operator attitude, or a combination of all of these. The key is to know where to apply your efforts first to maximize your benefit. And by utilizing these metrics within given operations or within given metrics, you can identify the specific tasks, resources, or process changes you need to address to improve your operation. This particular metric, the actual versus planned KPI, is the first of our three top KPIs that Matt presented earlier. The significance of this as a KPI tool is that you can't increase the amount of time that your vehicle is moving product if the vehicle isn't logged on or turned on. So this is the first step is to, if I'm expecting to operate the vehicle, am I? And what is the distribution of the operators that are doing that? Our second top KPI is when a vehicle is logged in or assigned, is it moving or lifting? We define this as the vehicle is active. Having a vehicle turned on but just sitting in place doesn't do anything to help the overall performance of why you bought your fork truck, and that is to move products. The format of this slide is the same as the previous and shows each of these comparator groups has more variability than they did within the actual login hours. Dallas is still leading Philadelphia, and Philadelphia has some very significant challenges and those that are falling short of even the team average. However, both are showing a significant portion of the resources that are underperforming, and this identifies a significant opportunity for them to improve their overall financial performance. The last of our top three KPIs, when a vehicle is active, is it actually moving something, or is it simply looking busy? You can go into any warehouse operation and see tremendous amount of vehicle activity moving back and forth and side to side. But whether or not they're actually processing and moving product from one door to the other and getting the throughput that you desire is a quite different matter. It's important also here to note that although Philadelphia has been lagging behind Dallas for the prior two, in this particular metric, their average and their 85th percentile performance is much greater than Dallas. This is a common occurrence that we observe across a large portion of our customer base. No one location has all the answers to all the challenges that could be constraining their performance. It's only in looking at each operation from multiple viewpoints, our top 3 KPIs, that an organization can learn to when and how to maximize the overall improvement of the entire organization. This concept, the overall performance of a given location within an organization, is dependent upon the interaction between multiple KPIs, has led us to establish a quadrant-based scoring method to compare and contrast multiple locations within an enterprise or across an industry. And Matt will be taking you through this analysis method.
Thank you, Roger. The best performers are not always the best at everything, but they're maybe the best in class at an average, but they're doing different functions every day. A quick and simple way to determine how your sites are performing is the quadrant chart. So by combining 2 separate KPIs onto one chart, in this case KPI number 2 and KPI number 3, we can graph an entire enterprise consisting of multiple sites, and then we can evaluate and compare their operations. So just to get you oriented to the chart you're looking at, KPI number 2, vehicle with activity versus your login time, is your x-axis, going horizontally, and KPI number 3, vehicles moving with product versus vehicles with activity, it's on the y-axis. The origin, or your 0 point of the chart, represents the enterprise average of the vehicles relative to the KPIs. So this entire chart is a measure of how the sites are doing compared to the blended average of all sites put together within your enterprise. So this is the same data that Roger showed on an earlier slides, but representing 2 KPIs at the same time, giving you a 2-dimensional view of the operation at one glance. In this view, you'll see that Seattle and Dallas are performing better than average for both activity versus login and moving with load versus activity. So these sites are more productive than the average. If we chart out some more sites, you can see that Miami and Los Angeles and Denver are performing better than average on vehicle moving with product, but they're performing below average on vehicle activity versus login time. So they are doing well in one of the 2 KPIs. So they're in the upper left quadrant. Continuing on, if we chart some more sites, you see that Nashville, Phoenix, and Houston are performing above average on activity versus login, but they are below average for travel with load versus activity, which is the opposite mix from the sites in the upper left quadrant. These sites are active when they are logged in, but unfortunately it is without a load or pallet. So they are not necessarily doing well where value-added work is being done. And as we chart the remaining 2 sites, you'll see that they are lagging below average for both KPIs and they need attention. So utilizing this type of distribution mapping helps you quickly identify where there is a gap and which sites are underperforming within your multi-site enterprise. Like I said, no one site is usually the best in class. While Seattle is the leader, both Miami and Los Angeles are performing better when it comes to moving with load versus activity. So when they're moving product efficiently. So your analysis would lead you to want to find out what practices they are doing that they could share with the other sites to drive value at all sites. Likewise, you'd want to find out from Seattle what they're doing to improve their activity versus login ratio and share that with the other sites. So you can take multiple dimensions of your KPIs and drive value forward by sharing information. This chart shows how the multiple sites are doing against themselves. Using the ID Systems BI tool, you can compare this site to their industry average if you wish, like Roger had mentioned earlier, which could give a completely different view on how the sites are performing. Conversely, if you only had one DC or one plant, the chart could represent various departments within your facility. While they may have different functions, the name of the game is moving product, and you would focus your investigation and analysis on what the successful departments are doing well and sharing those ideas with the lagging departments to drive building improvement. Drilling down even further, so if you take that same information and you look at it on an operator level or a truck level, in this case we're looking at by operator, and once you identify an area of focus, you can go to this level to drive your value. In this case, we are looking at the percent of time the vehicle is active while logged in. You can see how the individual operators or trucks are doing to the average. It's quite apparent from a view like this who is performing above and who is performing below the group average in terms of performance. You would quickly focus on the operators performing below the group average and investigate the causal factors. I can tell you that in many cases, the lower productivity is not always a result of the operator performing poorly. Quite often, when you do your analysis and your investigation, you'll find there are other factors inhibiting the performance. It might be a facility issue or a process issue. Maybe the lower performers work in a congested area of the building. Maybe there's a bottleneck on how work is distributed to these operators in terms of labels or pick sheets. Whatever the cause, by using this type of analysis, you can quickly identify where the gaps are, come up with appropriate action to improve the team performance. So while looking at the chart, Nicholas, who is on the far right, may never be as productive worker as Eric is on the far left, but you can work to drive everyone above the average. For those that really struggle, you may need to look at job assignments, but more likely than not, you'll find out there are process or system inhibitors that are hampering their workload. Once you improve, while this type of data does not supply all the answers, it certainly highlights very definitive questions that management can uncover and go out on the floor and quickly answer those questions and come up with the actions needed to drive improvement. The thing to remember is once you improve the team performance, you'll move the average, and you can reevaluate and address. So in other words, everyone will do better, the new average bar will move up, you can now see who your leaders and laggers are and address accordingly. Improving your productivity is an iterative process and a continual quest to drive improvement and value. I'd like to turn it back over to Roger now, who will walk you through an example of how you can quantify your KPI values. Roger.
Matt, thank you. And as we've taken you through, there are significant benefits and significant opportunities from an operational perspective that can be done by measuring and applying the information identified by these three simple KPIs that are available, that can be developed and maintained and measured through the application of VMS KPI tools. And now one key element of these three KPIs is that their benefits are actually additive. They do not overlap, and from a financial perspective, if you increase any one of them, the financial benefit or the financial contribution of that is not tainted or does not influence the other. They can all be managed independently to drive overall system performance. Everything that we try to do in the material handling industry is to maximize or to minimize the amount of time it takes us to process or move each unit load or each piece that we manage through our facilities. So by applying these three KPIs, you'll see from this chart, if we look at the top portion, the first element within the examples we took you through today, getting to the industry average or the enterprise average of actual versus planned login, KPI number 1, on average as 12.7 minutes of moving with material, value-added work for each vehicle each day. For KPI number 2, when I'm logged in, am I moving? 9.8 additional minutes. KPI number 3, when I'm moving, am I actually moving product? 15.1 minutes. The additive value of applying all three KPIs to an organization results in over almost 38 minutes of incremental time each day for each vehicle moving product. It's not increasing the labor force. It's not increasing the payroll. It's the same labor force, same hours worked, the same vehicle, just 38 more minutes of product being moved each day. That translates into a daily benefit per vehicle of $12.50. That may not sound like a lot, but when you put it over a year, it's over $4,500 per year. Across the fleet, and for this example, we use a 75 vehicle fleet. It's almost $350,000 per year for the application of these KPIs. That's just to meet the average. If we were able to attain performance at or near the 85th percentile, that $340,000 per year becomes almost $1 million per year, or a little bit more than $12,000 per vehicle within your operation. These values This financial benefits, more importantly, the throughput benefits within your organization of being able to handle more product, process more material with the same equipment and the same workforce to improve your efficiency and your competitive advantage within your industry, we believe is very significant, and it can help each of your organizations drive significant improvement to your own individual bottom lines. In summary, our KPIs are really about quantifying and identifying best practices and benchmarks across the industrial vehicle fleet within each of our industries. We focus on low-performing operators because that's where the opportunity is. And as Matt mentioned before, it's most commonly not the operator. It's the process, it's the work environment, it's the tools, it's the outside influences. It is occasionally an attitude issue, but again, you can identify those and address those appropriately. Calculating the performance improvements that you can do relative to your baseline and being able to accurately track and measure and establish new baselines when you do process improvements is an additional key benefit within your organization. To be able to have a simple method to place a marker or start point and track performance from that data point gives you a simple tool when asked, I gave you $1 million to do this process, what have you given back to me? And be able to quantify that budgetary spend very easily. Additionally, it allows you to not only justify the VMS, the value back for the return on your investment for VMS technology, but can be utilized to justify your return on investment for multiple technologies related to material handling fleets and workforce. This is the beginning of a series of webinars that we'll be doing. This first one was our top 3 KPIs. In the coming future, we'll be doing KPIs relative. We'll be doing seminars based upon safety metrics and KPIs, including impact management, and others that are focused more on the equipment and equipment utilization and right sizing and managing the right distribution and makeup and mix of your fleet. At this time, I'd like to turn this back over to Tom for a period of time of a Q&A session. Tom?
Thanks, Roger and Matt. Nice job. I wanted to open this up to questions now. We have a few that have been submitted already, and while our presenters are answering your questions, please take a moment to answer the feedback form that appears on the bottom left-hand corner of your screen. First question, what's the biggest challenge in successfully implementing a VMS system?
I'll let you take that one.
Sure. I think the biggest challenge is really just the change management style of rolling out any large-scale project that affects team members and the supervisors. So, I think the rollout challenges, number one, would be training. You have to make sure you train all your operators, let them know it's coming well before you install anything. Constant information of what's coming down the line for them, and you really have to help them understand, what's in it for them at the team member level, so that they understand that, hey, the OSHA checklist, some of these things are going to relieve a lot of the paper trail and clerical duties. It's also going to make sure you're on a safe truck because you're going to be testing the steering and the brakes before you even go on it. You're not going to get in trouble for damage that someone else did before you because you're going to notify that on your OSHA checklist. As well as just making sure you have a safe fleet and letting your supervisors know what's coming down the pike for them. They're going to have an easier time managing through a system that has data, and it's going to turn all their team member conversations into a data-driven conversation versus an emotional conversation about performance or impacts or things like that. It's just getting that shift from how they're doing things today to utilizing the system. So the challenge is really just the transition from what they're doing today to this system, and then helping them understand how much that system is going to make their workload easier long term. But short term, it's about communication and training.
This question I think you might have answered during the course of the presentation, but do they have to be on the truck to be logged in?
This is Roger, and no, they don't technically, and that's actually a key part of our KPI KPI number 2 is they can be logged in and off the vehicle. So just because the vehicle's turned on doesn't mean they're sitting on the seat or in the operating compartment standing on the dead man pedal. And that metric helps to address or helps to capture and identify work behaviors where people oftentimes are off their machine more than others. Every job function is different. If you're doing case pick or you're doing inventory or cycle checking, you have a different expectation for the amount of time spent on a machine. But within each work group or within each job function, to understand the variance within that team, where the laggards are that are underperforming within that same job function, and focusing on what needs to be done to address and to assist those associates to improve their performance up to that team level is what the key part is.
Okay. Can the system be used on tuggers for delivery trains to a production line?
Absolutely. We do that quite often. And the topic of this webinar focused on lift trucks, but the technology and the metrics are applicable to a wide range of industrial vehicles across a multitude or a large variety of markets and industries. Obviously, lifting with load isn't a metric for tuggers, but knowing when a tugger has product behind it or just driving around empty, if there's something on its hitch or not, that's the comparative metric in a tugger world. So there are still three KPIs, which is slightly different for a tugger-based or tow-based environment.
Does the VMS work using Wi-Fi or RF, and is the information real time?
In an industry at large and overall, there are a variety of different solutions that are utilized. We can speak for ID Systems in particular. We use both Wi-Fi and an RF or 900 megahertz architecture. We pride ourselves in the ability to conform to the needs for wireless communication that our customer base has. We have a very rich product portfolio and the ability to operate in many, many different environments, including indoors and outdoors or combinations of both of those.
Guys, how do some companies, best practice companies, use the data they collect to improve their safety? We talked a lot about productivity. Are there some best practices for using the data to improve safety?
Matt, I think you've got some really good insight on how this can be done based upon your experience at Walmart.
Sure. The system through monitoring impacts and really with access control, making sure that a trained driver is on the truck. The system also can manage whatever your company training expectations are. I know for us in the past we had an annualized training process. We could build that into the database so that they'd have to get the refresher training. If that year expired and they didn't get the training, refresher training, that person would not be allowed on the truck. Usually you catch that beforehand, but ultimately that's the kind of accountability you have to make sure that your training sessions from a management standpoint occur, as well as that your team members are getting what they need. Really, the impact sensing is big. There's a lot of activity going on in a warehouse, and a lot of phantom hits and things like that of rack or beams. But once you have the accountability of that, it changes the whole culture of your drivers. They realize, hey, maybe we need to slow it down a notch. Productivity is big, but safety is king. So just having that ability, you have some incidences up front that you do some investigation on, and then you watch those really drop off. 75 to 90% of what you experienced without a VMS go away, just because you change the entire safety culture of your team through the accountability of the system.
Okay. We have a few more minutes left for a few more questions. What's the minimum number of sites or vehicles you think would be needed to make analytics valuable?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question, and it comes up often, and people think that unless I'm a Fortune 50 company, I don't have enough breadth and enough scale to warrant or benefit from this type of solution. For an individual site, what we have found is anything in the 20 to 25 vehicle range or larger. If you're only a single site and you're standalone single site operation, you can benefit from the tools to help you improve your overall performance and identify where your low-hanging fruit is to maximize the benefit. From a multi-site perspective, we have many clients that are the 3, 4, and 5 location operations. We have some that are 30 and 40, but many are 3, 4, and 5. And it's interesting that as you get more and more sites, your fleet size for each of those individual sites can be much smaller, because it becomes much more important now to understand how are my performances across those sites. What can I do to utilize the data to improve my overall? Where do I have to focus my attention within a given location? And most importantly, and this will be a topic of one of our future webinars, is what can I do to balance my asset distribution across multiple locations? And 6 sites with 10 or 15 vehicles apiece truly benefit from that process.
Yeah, I think we have time for one or two more questions here. What are the different industries that you have benchmark data for?
Yeah, I think it was on one of the earlier slides, but we definitely have it for retail distribution, heavy manufacturing and light manufacturing, 3PLs, aviation as well. So we have a wide variety of industries based on our core customer base.
Is there one that uses these the most? I mean, that gets most bang out of it, would you say?
This is Roger, and I think if we said where our biggest penetration is, it's probably a balance between medium heavy manufacturing and a combination of distribution and 3PLs. Hopefully, from a facility type or operation type, warehousing and distribution and manufacturing are our two largest customer bases. But we have significant growth going on right now on our aviation footprint.
I guess we have time for one more here. How do you help this is kind of a broad question, but how do you help your customers ensure that they get the benefits of the system from the initial install to ongoing use of the solution?
I think go ahead, Roger.
No, go ahead, Matt. You started. Yep.
I think we have a series of pre-sale coordination meetings. We need to make sure we know what the customer wants, first of all, and what they need, so that what we deliver it coincides with what they need. That makes it much easier to make sure they're getting the benefit. And then we have a series of post-sale abilities to come in and make sure, do some retraining after a period of time, come in and make sure that they're realizing all the benefits of the system. So we kind of keep our fingers on the pre-side and on the post-sale side to just help ensure that the customers are reaching the total value they expected, and in most cases exceeding that. And that's really just working with them in a partnership and a continual touch points as to how they're doing with the system.
Okay, well, I think
Tom,
yep.
Tom, let me add to that slightly, and that one of the things, and I'm going to make this more of a general standpoint for the audience, that in response to this question is, this question actually ties to the root of the biggest challenge for not just VMS, but for other technologies that get deployed within operations. That the technology is purchased and implemented, but there isn't a strong support or championship network behind the scenes or to support the organization and how to maximize the value of that operation. And so, we at ID Systems have an organization that we call a performance engineering organization that handles this. I would encourage that anyone who looks at a VMS technology to seek out a consultative role or an ongoing support functionality that has industry experts or operational experts that come from industry that can help them understand how to interrogate, interpret, and apply the information that's there. All of you are busy within your operations each and every day. You have very, very full schedules, and it's our job as a supply base for these types of technologies to assist you in making the messaging as succinct and as clear as possible, so that you can do what you do best, which is run your operations, and we can do what we do best, which is help you get intelligence and visibility within how you can improve it.
All right. Well, thank you, gentlemen. That concludes today's presentation. On behalf of Material Handling and Logistics, I'd like to thank you for joining the webcast today. Thank you to ID Systems for sponsoring this event for us, and to the rest of you who attended, have a productive remainder of the day. Thank you.